Ladies and gentlemen, dear students, welcome to Astronomy International Network Astro Week. Actually, we are glad to have with us today one of the most talented and creative experts with over than 20 years of expertise across education, startup, creative projects, and digital platforms. Mr. Jonathan Nalder has built a reputation for connecting future focused thinking with actionable human centered outcomes. His work spans creativity, innovation, and the future of learning indeed. As a speaker, ambassador, and a training coordinator, Mr. Nalder stays at the forefront of emerging technologies, including AI and VR, while applying methodologies like design thinking and human intelligences to drive impactful educational change. Guided by the vision of space exploration, Mr. Nalder aims to redefine education through his meaningful and impactful role as the founder of Edunaut. Now, dear students, for this special Astro Week, Mr. Nalder will take us in a very unique journey through his lecture to discover the Mars deserts research station. Well, Mr. Nalder, the floor is yours and you can get started.
So there we go. So thank you very much, Majda. Hi, everyone. Now, it's great to be chatting again with the eco-astronomy students. I think this is probably my third
Absolutely. Yes,
chatting with everyone. So I'm going to share some things that are new today. There might be some things, I'm not sure if we have previous students or if we're all new students, but there definitely will be some new things in here. I have a lot of things to cover, and it's all around that idea of my own journey, I guess, to the Mdrs, which I'm sure students know what that stands for, the Mars Desert Research Station, which I've actually got to visit twice, which is fantastic. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about my journey to there, and then a little bit beyond that. There's actually going to be a lot of activities that you'll be able to do. So today I will show you those activities. Then I will send the links so that you can try them all out for yourselves. All right, so yeah, as we said, this little lecture is all about my journey or journeys to the Mdrs, but also beyond that as well. So a whole bunch of things that I want to cover, but I just wanted to start with sort of reminding us in a very short little video about what we're talking about with Mars. And I know I've always been fascinated by Mars because, in some ways, it's obviously very, very different to Earth, to our home planet. But, then there's some things that are quite similar as well. And it's that sort of tension of, well, we have craters and we have deserts on Earth. There's some things that are very much the same, but obviously, hang on a second, it's a whole other planet, and instead of blue skies, you have orange skies, and there's so many things that are kind of weird and different about it as well. So there's always sort of been that weirdness, but also similarity that's sort of fascinated me about. Some things are very similar to being like Earth, but some things are very, very different. All right, so a little bit about me. Now I've started off, actually the first thing I did was as a commercial pilot, and I'll talk about that more in a minute, but I started off then as a teacher, and then much later, I guess, in life, went on to start doing space and Mars programs, etc., which includes, as you can see down the end there, being a Mars Society ambassador. I've got my Mars Society ambassador patch here, just like Aravinda does. I'm sure he's already talked to you a lot about the Mars Society, and when many of you are old enough, it's a pretty good chance that you'll be able to join the Mars Society as well officially. I think you should definitely aim towards that. All right, so I'll let you read a little of those other things there, but for our lecture, these are the 7 things that we're going to talk about. Some will take a bit longer than some will be a bit shorter. First, I'm going to talk about my early journey, and I think that's important because all of you as students, you're at the start of your journey, and I just want to tell you a little bit about where I started. Maybe it'll be same as you, or maybe it'll be really different. But it's good to stop and think about where you're starting from. Then I'll talk about my 2 trips to the Mdrs. Then I want to tell you all about these hands-on activities that you can do. And some of them I'll talk about what I do if I'm with students face-to-face. But I want to go through a whole lot of activities and First Kids in Space activities that you can do more online as well. So you'll be able to access them as a YouTube channel I want to tell you about. And then, as I said, we want to have some question time at the end. Right, so starting off with the early journey of Jonathan. Now, I grew up in the 1980s, which, was a long time ago now, but it was pretty cool. This is when Star Wars was just becoming a thing, and I got to go and see Return of the Jedi, and I still got my Return of the Jedi cup here from all the way back in that time. Really, that sort of idea of space. I know Star Wars is obviously fictional, but still got me interested. And also we had the space shuttle flying in the 1980s, which I grew up with. Even then, when humans went to the moon was a long time in the past. But what we did have was the space shuttle, and that was the very sort of big, exciting space program at the time. And then later on, when I was at high school, I decided one of the things I wanted to do in life was be a pilot. Had a problem though, which was that I was not very good at physics at school. So I did take physics because that was one of the required subjects. However, by the end of year 12, my final year at school, the mark that I got for physics was a C-. And so C-, that's just a passing grade, but only just. And not necessarily good enough to go and be a pilot. But the thing was, I applied anyway, and I did get into a scholarship. And you can see a picture of me sitting in one of our training planes on the screen. So I did get into that scholarship. And it turns out that when I was actually learning about physics for something I really loved, something I was doing, which was learning to fly, suddenly my physics grades went up a lot. And that really taught me that sometimes at school, you're learning things, it's not really connected to the real world or what you're interested in. But what I love about what Astronomy is doing, what you guys are learning is, you probably joined this course because you're really interested in astronomy and space. And so that connection to the real world, as soon as I was learning to fly, something I was really interested in, my physics grade went way up to about 85-90%. And yeah, I did get to get my pilot license and my commercial pilot license. Now, it didn't work out for me to go further than that, but that was okay. I still use those skills all the time, and I've kept that, interest in aerospace all the way through my career. I did then go off and do teaching, as I've already told you. I was a teacher in high schools and a teacher in primary schools. But what's happened in the last few years is I've got to come back around to aerospace and flying and piloting. And I basically had an opportunity to develop what's called the First Kids on Mars workshops. And you can see a photo on my screen there of some kids acting out, having fun. We did a lot of this sort of what you might call play-based learning and role play when we're doing our First Kids on Mars workshops. And so that was a lot of fun, and that really got me really interested in space and Mars again. And that led to my first visit to the Mars Desert Research Station, the Mdrs. And you can see down the bottom of my screen a couple of rovers. And every year, the Mars Society hosts something called the Universal Rover Challenge. Now, I know pretty sure there's been teams from Sri Lanka. I'm in Australia. There have been teams from universities here in Australia. And all around the world, in many, many countries, you'll have students who are at university who will actually build their own rover. I'll see if I can zoom in on, hopefully you can see that one there. And they're quite big. And they're designed to be able to fulfill different missions around the actual Mdrs itself. Excuse me. They have to be able to go and pick some things up and bring them back. to be able to traverse or move over varying terrain of rocks or sand. And all the teams earn points. All of them have their own design, and it goes for 3 days. It's pretty fascinating. So if that's something you're really interested in, maybe when you're older, you might be able to be in a team. But even so, you can look up the URC, the Universal Rover Challenge, and you can learn about all the teams. And as I said, they compete there every year. And so that was great. There's only 1 day a year when you can actually visit the Mdrs. Now, let's just recap. Where are we talking about? So Utah, the state of Utah in the USA, and it's down in the south of Utah is where the base is located, and obviously for reasons because the ground and the dirt and also a lot of the geology and the rocks are very, very similar to some places on Mars. So it's a perfect place to go and test out these rover designs. And as I said, teams from all around the world come and compete to win that trophy each year. And it's the 1 day of the year when, if you get permission, the public is allowed to come in and watch some of that competition and actually visit the Mdrs. So that was way back in about 2016. I got to do that. I was visiting some family. Let me show you a little bit more about what that actually looked like. So yeah, we're talking about Utah, very famous for its desert areas. Now, as I said, I got to visit with some family, and this is the old sign that used to sit out the front of the Mdrs and welcome you. And yeah, you can see why this area was chosen for a Mars base for research, because of how similar it is. Apart from the blue sky, just ignore that blue. Apart from that, it's incredibly similar to the geology you would find on Mars. Now, some interesting things about the Mdrs. It's powered pretty much only by those solar panels whenever possible. There's several different buildings now that make it up, and we'll talk a bit more about what those buildings are later on. So yeah, that was a fantastic chance. I even got to stick my head inside the bottom level of the habitat. It's changed quite a bit since then. They've had quite a bit more development done, but yeah, not sure if you're ever going to find yourself in the USA, in Utah, but if you want to visit, that 1 day a year during the rover challenge is the time to go. Okay, now my second visit was, I really wanted to get back there again. That little 1 day visit for the rover challenge was not enough for me. But it took me about 5 years later until I had a chance to go all the way back over to the USA again to get back there. And this time I was part of a crew. It was the Crew 270. I've got my mission patch here. We actually designed this mission patch ourselves. You can see we chose a triangle design. We've got Mars there, the 3 red, green, blue colors of the Mars flag, and our names, etc. on there. And when you go to the Mdrs, one of the things your team gets to do is design your own patch. It's pretty cool. So yeah, that was part of as I said, it's called Spaceward Bound, and it's a program sponsored by NASA, one of their centers, the Ames Center. And Spaceward Bound is just for teachers and just for educators. But in the last couple of years, they've also added student teams. And they have had a couple of student teams there. I'm talking students who are about 15, 16, 17, who've also been able to go along as part of Spaceward Bound. Now, our crew, you can see a picture down the bottom there of our crew. We were there for 1 week for our teacher mission. Sometimes the missions are 2 weeks, sometimes they're even 2 months or longer, but ours was just 1 week that we got to spend there. And I'm not sure if you have a chocolate bar called Mars bars where you are. They don't have these in the USA. Hopefully you can see that on my screen, the Mars bar. But here in Australia, we do have that chocolate called a Mars bar. So of course I had to take that. I had to take a Mars bar with me when I went there to show that off to. I was the only Australian on my team. The rest of our team was from the USA, but we had an amazing time. One of the things that I remember most about that trip was our simulation, and we get to choose as a team what our focus is. Now, safety is always the number one focus, but after that, we could put some things in priority, and we actually chose developing education programs as our number two. But our number three, out of what you have five priorities, and our number three priority was the simulation. And that meant that for, I think it was 5 out of our 7 days, we were in simulation, which means basically, yep, we're pretending that we're on Mars for real. We can't just open the door and walk outside whenever we want because there's no air outside. We have to wait in the airlock room for 3 to 5 minutes as well before. We also have to put on the helmet and the suit before we can go outside. We're using the power from the solar panels just like we would on Mars. And if we're sending messages to the outside world, we have to wait a certain amount of time before we get a message back to simulate the time delay, all those sorts of things. So that was probably one of my favorite things. I really enjoyed putting on the suit, and I'll show you a short little video as well, just to give you more of a visual idea, I guess, of what it looked like when I got to go to the station. You can see this is sort of arriving there. I spent a fair bit of my time just capturing photos of places like the greenhouse, as you can see here, and the research lab as well. Here's me wearing the suits and waiting in the airlock, heading outside for some of the exploration missions, even driving rovers, the electric rovers that they have at the Mdrs. was super excited. We did quite a few of these where we went out to find certain types of rocks and minerals. And we also did a bit of stargazing. The desert skies were very, very clear at nights. Did quite a bit of hiking out and around the base. There are also fossils, and we launched some little toy rockets as well as part of that trip. So yeah, that's a quick little look at what that was like. And as I said, I mean, it's a long way. It might take you a few years before you could organize the chance. It was the same for me. Coming from Australia all the way to the USA is also a long way. But if you've got that mission, that dream, I guess, maybe eventually you might have that chance to go as well. Or another idea is that somewhere in your country, you could also set up a simulation. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be a perfect desert location like that one. What's important is more that the simulation, that you decide what you want it to be, you get enough of a habitat or a room that you can use, and then you can still research and maybe do something closer to home as well. So yeah, that was all about my second visit to the Mdrs. So my journey so far then, yep, I had that early dream about aerospace, and then I got to visit first time as part of the rover challenge, and then my second time where I got to actually live there for a week. But now I want to spend some time talking to you about, well, what can you do? What are some activities that you guys can do? And when I'm teaching and running the Mars workshops, I actually always love to do as much what we call playful or hands-on learning with everyone as possible. So we always have props. I've got some metal that's flown in space that was part of a space shuttle. I also love to take along, this is probably about almost the favorite thing that I own, the little tiny speck inside this case here. And that's actually a little piece of Mars. Now, since we've had rovers on Mars over the last sort of 15 years or so, they've been able to test the rocks on Mars, and basically that means that we've now then been able to look at asteroids that have come to Earth and check if those asteroids did they just come from somewhere in space. Obviously most of them did, but there is actually few, and I think they've found about 7 that are rocks that actually have come from Mars. Somehow they've been something has hit Mars, knocked some rocks into space, and then some of those rocks has made it as far as Earth and crashed down as asteroids. And we've been able to find those. And I've been able to get a couple of pieces of those asteroids to take them to students. And basically that means that when we take those into our classroom, everyone is able to hold a little piece of Mars for real. And we do other props, etc. as well that we love to go hands-on with. And one of those is what we call regolith, or simulated Mars regolith, which is the dirt or the soil. Now, no one's ever been able to bring something back from Mars to Earth yet, apart from the accidental asteroid rocks that we were just talking about. One day, there are plans by NASA and also by the Chinese Space Agency to collect some samples and bring them back by rocket to Earth for study. Until that happens, we have simulated Mars regolith or soil. And this is where the data from the rovers, what the rovers on Mars have told us about the soil, they've sent that back to Earth, and then scientists are able to recreate that. And of course, you know all about the simulant soil because Aravinda and Astronomy have been working on some of this as well. So that's also a great hands-on activity. Now, as you can see, I generally will take along some little mini microscopes and then students are able to actually look up close. And one of the fascinating things about a lot of the soil on Mars is it's super tiny. It's a very, very fine dust due to the weather, the lack of moisture, etc. on Mars has worn a lot of the sand and the dust down to be really, really tiny. And when you can look at that through a microscope, students can start thinking, what would it be like to live there? It's not a matter of just walking around like we would on Earth. We're going to have to think everything will be covered in this very, very fine dust that's probably stick to everything. What's that going to mean for the settlers there? So being able to go hands-on and play and look closely at this kind of stuff really helps with that. As I said, no doubt you've already heard quite a bit about that simulated soil from Mars. Okay, another activity. Now, this is not something that we could do face-to-face. This is something you'll be able to do online later on. And as I said, I'm going to send these links because I would love you to try out some of these. When I came back from the Mdrs, I started working on some of these activities for students to do. Even if you can't go to the Mdrs for real, or even if that's a long way off, I wanted there to be some activities that students could try out for themselves anyway. And this is the very first one. And this is a virtual reality experience, but you can also just do it on any computer. If you are lucky enough to have access to a VR headset, you can load it up and you can zoom around in 360 or in VR. But if not, that's fine. You can still try it out for yourselves. And it starts off with a view like this. And I took a lot of 360-degree photos when I was over at the Mdrs, and then I put them inside this. Now, what might be actually good to show this to everybody, but I think I'm only sharing my slides at the moment. So if I copy that link and then I might stop sharing for a second, so that I can actually share a bit more. So
Go space.
Excellent, thank you. So when you get the link and you try it out, this is what it will look like. And you will be able to click the play button. And as I said, if you've got a VR headset, you can put that on and you'll be able to zoom around. You'll be able to look around and it sort of looks like we're on Mars, but I've set up just this little bit that's like the Mdrs. And we can actually fly around and have a look. Oh, there's a robotic telescope observatory. So that's a telescope that at certain times people are able to use the internet to come in and control that telescope and actually see the stars. There's our solar panels. There is a solar observatory which was set up just for examining the sun. There is also a science lab over here. At greenhouse, there's the main habitat. As you can see, it's the biggest, it's 2 stories high, and then there's also an engineering. Now, what I've set this up is that we can actually go and have a look inside and see, well, if I was standing in the greenhouse, what would it actually look like? If I was inside there, And I can click and drag and look all around, and I can see, oh, they were trying to grow some snow peas when I was there, as well as a whole bunch of other vegetables. And when I was on my Crew 270, we actually got to eat some of the greens, some of the food that was being grown there. And that was the only fresh food that we were allowed to have. Everything else was dried food. So the green food that they grow is very, very useful. One of the other things that you might want to think about, and maybe we could do a follow-up lecture on this, is that, yes, Jonathan has made this for you to have a play around with, but also you're able to do something which is called remix this space. So you're actually able to take this and add your own things on top of what I have built. So that might be a little challenge in the future to think about. We could do another lecture on that. And what you would be able to do is add your own things. We might even challenge you to say, what would the Mdrs need next? It's got a habitat and a greenhouse and a science lab, all those things. But what do you think would be the next building that they would need to add there? And then you would actually be able to build it just like add it on here, just like I have. So that's a little bit of a look into that activity. Just go back to my slides. I think you can see those slides again now, Mashta, is that right?
Positive, we can.
Excellent. All right, so that's the first activity. And like I said, we'll send you that link. Another one of the activities that I set up so people can test out the Mdrs is what's called a virtual escape room. Now, an escape room is a challenge. It's a little bit like a game where you are inside a certain area and you get given clues, which you have to solve those clues before you can move to the next area. And then you solve some more and you move to the next area until you complete that game. And so I've made this one, which is an Mdrs escape game. Now, it's not finished yet. So if you get the chance to test this one, you'll be able to help me. You might have some ideas that I can use then when I are able to actually work on finishing it. And the problem that you try and solve in this challenge is imagining that the Mdrs is on Mars and you've been there for 3 months, but you're already started to crave some fresh green food to help remind you of home and also improve your health and your mood. You never thought you would crave eating vegetables and lettuce so much. So as it says there, this mission will take you on a journey through 5 of the key areas in the station. And once you load it up, it'll look a little bit like this. You'll get to see an overview of the base, and it'll give you some information about each of the different sections. But as you can see, most of these areas are locked at the moment, and that's what tells you those aren't solved yet. First of all, you have to come down to the bottom, and you start with this one, which is a view. It'll be looking down at the station is where you'll start, and there'll be some challenges and some questions you have to answer. If you can successfully solve those first ones, then the game will let you move down to exploring and unlocking some of the other spaces as well. So as I said, we'll send that link through and you might be able to test out. The first section is what I've finished so far, and you'll be able to test that out and maybe send back some ideas. All right, now I think I've still got about another 3 or 4 activities to tell you about. The next one is also about the Mdrs, and this one is our chat room that I built. And basically it lets you imagine, yep, you've gone to Mars and the Mdrs is actually on Mars itself, but they're having some problems at the base. And your job when you come to test out this website, your job is to try and find out what are those problems so you can start helping to solve them. Now, you can see there's a character there that you have to chat with, and you do that by typing. And as you can see on my screen, some of the questions I was asking, it's kind of meant to be a little bit of a cranky Jonathan character. So I've got my Australian flag. I built that into the little chatbot here. And he's a bit cranky though. When you type to him, you're gonna have to find a way to get him, even though he's, a bit tired and cranky, a bit hard to talk to, you're gonna have to find a way in what you type to get him to reveal what are the problems that you can actually help with. So that's the challenge with that one. But also, this chatbot has been programmed that it knows an awful lot about Mars. It knows a lot about the Mdrs. So you, apart from finding out the problems, you can also just chat and use it as a way to learn. You can ask them all kinds of things about the gravity on Mars, the seasons, all those sorts of things, and it'll be able to help you with that also. So that is another one of the links that we'll send in case that's one that you would like to help us try out. All right, a couple more. Now, some students in Sri Lanka have already helped out with this one, because another one of my projects is called the First Kids in Space. And First Kids in Space is all about younger students who are maybe 6 years old up to about 10 or 12 years old. It's all about getting their ideas and giving them the information they need to get even more interested in space. And this is the first of the projects. And in this project, we call it Citizen Science. And Citizen Science is a way where a whole bunch of people can join together. Citizens from all over the world, in this example, can join together, give their little bits of information, and that contributes to a much bigger science project. And this particular one, we're wanting to collect kids' ideas about space. So there are 3 questions that we ask. All right? The first question is, when did your space dream start? So I've told you a little bit about my earlier interest in space, and I'm sure all of you probably have that. You know, what was that first thing that helped get your dreaming about space? How did that start? So that's question 1. Question 2, well, why does space fascinate you? Like, what is it about it that really got you interested in the first place? That's question 2. And question 3, if you were going on a space mission, what item from home would you take with you? What small little item that you could fit in your bag, what would you choose to take with you? So those are the 3 questions. So there'll be a link for that we'll send as well. Now, I'd love to have some more students from your country. All you need to do is click the link, and then you'll see a blue button called New Observation. It's this one down here. You'll be able to click that and then just type in your answers to those 3 questions. It will show you a map. You can, if you have permission, if you're allowed to, you can put on the map where you are as well, but you don't have to do that particular bit. As I said, the main thing is we'd love to get those. Now, I've also started collecting the answers that we've had so far, and it includes, we've had one answer from an actual astronaut. Commander Greg Johnson is an astronaut that went on kind enough to give his answers to those questions as well. We've put those in, as well as other scientists like Dr. Michaela Masalova, who is an analog astronaut. She's also been to the Mdrs and many other of those kinds of missions, and she's currently doing a mission where she's looking at extremophiles and doing astrobiology at the world's highest mountain. And she's actually in Antarctica at the moment to do that. So she's another one of the people that's put their ideas in. And even if you're maybe a little bit older than 12, would still love you to put your ideas in there. All right, next part of First Kids in Space that you can actually access is our free book. So I've written this only late last year, and it's designed to basically try and give you everything you need to know as a space explorer before you launch and before you get, out into actually doing your career. If you're still a kid, this book is designed to give you everything that you would need to kickstart that dream. And it also has a chapter for grown-ups, for adults and parents. If you want to download it or get them to read it online, maybe some of your the grown-ups in your life might be interested in that as well. And it's all from firstkidsinspace.info. You'll be able to access that from there. And then the last little activity before we do some questions, if we have time, the last one I'd like to ask you to do, if you have access to YouTube, you may or you may not. If you don't have access, that's fine. But if you're able to load up YouTube, this is a channel I've been working on the last few months called LofiAirSpace. And it's all about scenes from airplanes and also from space. And some of it is a little bit educational. You can see some of the same footage that I've used in here. There's some videos just about Mars, but also there's videos there from all kinds of places around the solar system, as well as from airplane journeys. So if you're really into aerospace and you've got a YouTube account, that would be a really good one to check out. And I've still got a few more space ones there yet that I need to post. So I'll send that link through as well to get shared with you guys. Alrighty out. So that brings us to chance for any questions. Now, maybe I just covered an awful lot of things there. Obviously, we talked about the Mdrs, my early journey, and then the 2 trips I got to do there with the rover challenge, and then being part of Spacebound. But then I think, what was it, about 6 or 7 activities that I shared with you guys. So I'm going to turn off my slides now and come back just to check if we have any questions.
Well, actually, let me tell you that we are very, very excited and honored to learn of all these amazing experience you shared with us today, Mr. Nalder. And I have a question, actually.
Very good.
You have already mentioned that you went to the habitat 2 times, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we did have Mr. Burke with us.
Yes, of course.
Yeah. And we was talking about the environment of this habitat that allow you to be super creative. It's not about just one member who is creative, but all the members. Now, we would like to see your point of view, Mr. Nalder, and tell us, what is the secret of this energy in this habitat that makes the members creative and innovative? Because you are one of the most talented creative in education.
You're right, Marge. It is very, very inspiring. And I think because the Mdrs has been, James probably told you this, but the Mdrs has been, people have been working there for over 30 years, I think it is. And because it's been going for so long, and they started with just the habitat, the main 2-story building, but now as you saw, there's about 5 buildings now, and there are plans for them to keep adding to it. So the reason it's really inspiring is because it's been going for so long. And I was in crew 270. That's 270 crews had been there before me. And they're now up to, over 300 crews that have been there. Mm-hmm. So because you're part of something much bigger than yourself, that's what's so inspiring about it, I guess. So many people have been there already. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that I really liked was it's kind of open for anybody to join a crew. You still have to apply, but, once upon a time I would have thought, I'm not a scientist. Yes, I've done some aerospace, but I don't know how to do geology, or I don't know how to fix the solar panels, for instance. And I don't have that sort of science background, so maybe I can't go. But there are other roles, so you can go along and you can be the team journalist. Mm-hmm. You can write the diary each day, and you can take the photos and record that. Sometimes they have artists who go, and their job is to paint or to write poetry or stories about that, that experience. So there's room there for the scientists and the engineers, but there's also room for other people who are, more creative. So that's really inspiring. And also, it's just really well done. You feel like you're on Mars when you put on the helmet. It's all those sorts of things. You have to use the radio system for communications, etc. All of those things, I guess, come together to make it really inspiring. And as I said, it's a long way to go to visit Utah, but that doesn't mean that students can't practice a little mini version. You could do a special 1 day, where you just set up a little space, and then you can't do all of those simulations, but you might be able to do one part of it. If you know what I mean. Yeah. Good
Talking
question.
about talking about your experience in the habitat, and you said that it makes you feel like really you are in Mars, right? Simulation, all right. How did you felt about that? What is that memory that's still in your heart till today that makes you feel that, oh, if I will go to Mars, maybe I will feel this way?
Part of it is the desert. So when you're there at the MDRS, if you look around, there's no buildings, there's no trees, there's no cars or people. It's very feels very isolated. It's actually only about 10 minutes from a town. If you drive, it's only about 10 minutes from a town. But when you're there, you probably saw from some of the pictures, it just looks like you're in the middle of nowhere. So that helps you imagine. The other thing that really helps is everybody else. When everybody is we say pretending, but or role playing, but that's what you're there for. You do that in a professional way. When everybody sticks to the simulation, if you had one person who was just opening the door and going outside whenever they felt like it, like that would spoil it. But when everybody's really committed, and it even comes down to, as I said, the food. The food is all freeze dried, so you open up the pantry cupboard, and it's just a lot of tins. That's it. So.
And how do you feel? You want to live in Mars?
You have to get out the powdered eggs and mix them up. Or if you want bread, you have to get the powder and ingredients, and you have to actually bake it yourself from the dry ingredients. So that really sort of brings it home as well. And then maybe after a couple of days, you go to the greenhouse and get some fresh lettuce, and suddenly that is the tastiest lettuce you've ever had, I guess. So that really helps. Also, our sleeping rooms. Now, I didn't show you any pictures of that, but the upstairs room, and your students, guys, you can look up. There are a lot of pictures of what the inside of the MDRS is like. And upstairs, you go up a very tiny little ladder, and your bedroom that you sleep in is it's only about probably only about this wide. There's just enough room for a bed. And I had a suitcase and I couldn't even open my suitcase properly.
Whoa.
Because but that's realistic. That just makes you think, oh yeah, you're going to be restricted. So all of those things together, but especially when you've got the rest of the crew who are also being very professional. Now you have to do that because it's partly about the research. The more realistic you can do it together, then the better is the research results. And some of that research is, how do people handle living in such a small space? If the only way you can get to your bag and your clothes is up a tiny ladder, and if you have to go up and down that ladder 20 times a day, is that okay? Can humans handle that? Or can some handle it and not others? These are all these little practical things that they're researching that at the NDRS, and when enough people have been there, then we'll know the answer to even little things like that, I guess. So when we get to Mars, maybe we will have a little ladder. Maybe a little ladder is fine, and they'll build that. So
because I'm impressed. And here is another question, Mr. Nalder. What do you think? Living in a habitat demand much more responsibility, or living in your daily life?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know if it's more or less. It's probably just very different, I guess. So, I can only talk about for me, but I don't do a lot of cooking. I'm not a great cook. So when I was there, and only food is what you can make. You have to cook everything and put everything together. For me, that was a bit intimidating.
Wow!
At first, I was like, I'll do some other jobs. You guys do that, and I'll do something else. But it doesn't work that way. Everyone has to help, with everything.
Yeah.
So maybe so that was a little bit hard for me at first. That was definitely something that was harder. But after a couple of days, it was fine.
Yes.
So it's harder at first, but then you adapt. But also it means, well, maybe you can only send people to Mars who are adaptable, right?
Absolutely.
You know,
Because
so
because I believe, and correct me if I'm mistaken, every person of us have its own version of like positive personality and negative personality. And if you are in a small group, you want to show the best of you, just like a romantic love story, right?
Yeah, but it becomes a little bit like a family, I guess, as well. You know, like they're going to see you when you first wake up, and you're a bit grumpy or something. Like, you can't just show people your good side the whole time. So
okay.
I see. So you need to be able to be comfortable showing who you really are. Also, because you're stuck. We were only together for 1 week, but to go to Mars, it's 2 years at least. And so you have to have those kind of skills. And this is something else for your students to take note of is, yes, you need to be really good at, say, STEM, science, technology, engineering, and maths, those things. But you also need to practice your people skills.
Absolutely.
Can you be friendly and, help people and encourage them? Can you have empathy and understand them when they're struggling? All of those people skills are also very, very, very important.
And I believe they are much more important than, they are equally important to have to be a good person in a society, because even if you are a good scientist, but you didn't know how to communicate with your team, well, we are not going to go far away in that mission.
Exactly.
Now,
you go. You go.
So if you have the chance to return again to the habitat, what's gonna be the project or mission that you want to work about?
So I would go back tomorrow if I had the chance, and I'd love to go back and do maybe a longer, at least 2 weeks. Who knows? I don't know if that will ever happen. There is a Mars Society in Australia, and they want to build a habitat here in Australia as well. We also have deserts here, as students probably know. So maybe one day, that'll be a bit closer for me. I might get to go to that. But I would definitely go back. As for a project, I think I'd want to continue what I was doing. I'd want to take even more 360 photos. I'd love to take a drone next time and be able to actually get some of those photos from up above, as well as the inside ones. So,
interesting. And the last question, actually, I would like to know why the avatar you selected for the activity or the game is hard to talk to. Why is that? We have already
partly because it's better if it's a challenge. There's got to be some kind of challenge, and it's a little bit about being playful and making it a bit of a game. If you just typed to them and said, "What's the problem?" and they said, "Oh, it's this, and that," well, it would be sort of too easy. There'd be no game to it. But that one, there are probably other ways you could do it, but that one I made the game is about what can you type. And I mean, one of the things it turns out you find out pretty fast that he likes drinking coffee. So if you can type to them something about, "I'll make you a coffee," then that helps get some answers, and there's a few other things that your students can find out as well. What are the things that they like that will actually get them to open up and be comfortable? So it's a little bit of the people skills that we talked about as well.
Yes, absolutely.
It's just a chatbot. It's only AI. It's not real, but we tried to program it so it's got a little bit of I get irritated sometimes talking to IAs when they are hard to talk to. It depends on the mood, but I like your explanation, and as you have said, it will help you to develop also the communication type of aspect of the human, that we are practicing in our human societies right now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nalder, for honoring us and honoring eco-astronomy actually, and giving this opportunity to us to learn from your expertise and also to empower our students to see beyond what we have showed them. Thank you very much for your devotion, and please keep shining. You are a great, great idol to us and to many, many others. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Majda. I'll send through those links as well for you
Thank
to share.
you. Yeah. We will share them with our students, and we are going to follow you in YouTube. That for sure.
Very good. All right. Thanks,
Thank
everyone.
you so much.
Have
a nice day. Bye-bye. Well, dear students, I hope you guys have enjoyed today Astro Week, and we are going to see you in the evening. Stay safe and stay tuned. Bye-bye.